What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Cara. Will, what was the Week 11 YouTube TV and ESPN still haven't reached an agreement plan in your household?
So I'm just riding with Fubo. At this point, I'm like, you know what? This is a tax write-off since we work in sports. I'm just going to accept it and live with it. Because we just got enough we got to keep up with to where I'm like, well, if I got to do this and that. So yeah, it's become my new reality. But yeah, we're surviving.
So you're one of the few that did the 5-day trial and you're like, we're just riding it out.
Yeah, and it might be a situation where I don't know, like try to get a refund later, but I need the service, you know what I'm saying? So it's not even disingenuous to say like actually I just need this thing.
I did Fubo last week, the 5-day trial, canceled it after the ranking show on Tuesday night. Why I waited for the ranking show, as we talked about on Wednesday. Didn't have to do that, but whatever. It just timed up well. Canceled the Fubo so that it didn't auto-renew. And then yesterday did the Sling Day Pass. It was okay. I will say annoying that it didn't come with SEC Network, and I had to pay the extra $1, which, all right, it's $1. Who cares? But ended up paying $6 for the day pass. It was fine. I'm so annoyed though that I can't have two games on at once. I am so over it. When I saw ESPN during one of their halftime shows they rolled out that they were introducing multi-view to watch up to 4 games at once. I wanted to punch the TV. I did. I guess I was watching on my laptop. I wanted to punch my laptop. I didn't, and that took great restraint from me because I miss multi-view. I miss it with all my heart, and I feel for those who are still enduring this. And hopefully, maybe by the time people are listening to this, we'll have reached a resolution because I can't live like this. Will, I just can't.
Yeah, it's an extra slap in the face when they act like they discovered it in that way, where it's like, guys, we get this new feature, we're rolling out for you. It's like, brother, this is the feature you took from me. It's the classic, like taking the water and selling it back to people via bottle. It's like, what are we doing here?
Introducing, pick another verb, ESPN, pick another verb. Anyway, week 11. A good, not great slate of SEC games. We're starting to get into blowout territory. How about that? I didn't think blowouts existed anymore, but apparently it did. We're going to get to everything, including Garrett Nussmeier and DJ Lagway getting benched like a mere minutes apart. How strange that is to process with our perspective of what we had for 8 months of the offseason. A lot of stuff to get to, including, Diego Pavia still owning Auburn, even though Hugh Freeze wasn't even on the Auburn sideline and he was on a golf course somewhere probably. So we will get to all of it. Before we do, as we always do, guys, Dabble. Dabble is the place to be if you are into all things daily fantasy. It is a great time of year on the sports calendar. There is so much going on. Even if your team is out of the college football playoff hunt, there's NFL, there's NBA, there's NHL. There's just a ton right now, and Dabble is the place to be for it. It's one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports making picks, including college football, NFL. Like I mentioned, we got NBA going on as well. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. All right, well, let's start LSU Bama. I am old enough, and you're old enough, to remember when LSU scoring 9 points against Bama was celebrated.
Oh my gosh.
Game of the century.
That's hilarious. That's a great way to start too. Because yeah, it's a very similar offensive showing.
I say that not to troll. This was very far from the game of the century. Very, very far. Alabama won without a second half touchdown. Alabama beating LSU and Georgia this year without scoring a second half touchdown just doesn't feel quite right for who Alabama has been. That's just going to be a weird thing to look back on. Like, I don't know what we'll ultimately make of that, but I credit the Alabama defense that's played much better. The LSU defense played really well against Ty Simpson. I could say a lot of positive things about Alabama. I feel like a lot of those things are repeating myself. I think that the defense with Pierre, with Overton, like they're doing a lot of things up front that you would hope that this Kane Womack defense was going to be able to do. And they very much look like a team that is rounding into form, a lock to make it to Atlanta, even though they still can't really run the football. I believe they can clinch that with a win against Oklahoma. Still have the Iron Bowl left, but I don't know how Alabama wouldn't make it with only one loss. So TBD on all of that stuff. But the story of the night's Garrett Nussmeier. It's Garrett Nussmeier. He got benched in this game and if you didn't watch this game, and if you're wondering, because I realize, as we mentioned, a lot of people just touching grass without YouTube TV right now. if you're wondering, hey, I'm looking at the box score right now. This dude had 3 incompletions. How did he get benched in a competitive game? Surely he got hurt and he just got up too slow, and Michael Van Buren came in and provided a spark or something like that. It was a 3-play sequence that really encapsulated how bad 2025 has been for him, Will. And when this happens, and we'll break it down in a second here. When this happens, did you as an LSU fan know that this was his time and that an interim coach, Frank Wilson, was about to pull the plug on Garrett Nussmeier?
At this point, it's almost like I had given up. I hate to say hope because your offense has to have hope, right? And with Garrett Nussmeier, they really didn't. That's the thing, is that to your point, you could look at the stats and box score watch, but it felt hopeless. And that's what you never want to be as an offense, is to not have the confidence in your quarterback. And so that being said, something that's really interesting that I noticed is that Brian Kelly was quick to, pull players for mistakes or yell at guys or bench guys other than Garrett Nussmeier. And it feels like Frank Wilson did the exact opposite. A Bauer Sharp, a Harlan Berry got a second or third chance within the context of this game. But finally, it was time for Garrett Nussmeier to get the same justice that other LSU players had felt, justly or unjustly throughout the year, where your performance matters in the SEC. This is not a daycare. You have to go out there and give your team a chance to win. And I think Michael Van Buren gave him the best chance to win.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And once I saw this sequence play out, I thought this is done. This is over. This era, this iteration of Garrett Nussmeier at LSU has reached its end, and it was a depressing end. But when you have 3rd and goal from the Alabama 8, and you're down 17-3 coming out of halftime, and you're kind of doing some things together on this drive. Nussmeier made some nice throws on this drive, not necessarily big time downfield throws, but being able to layer a little bit at least whatever his 2025 version of layering is. And he had gotten his helmet ripped off on that one rare scramble. And you're thinking, all right, this guy's he's showing toughness. He's doing all these things that we hope he can do, even when he is clearly still limited. And LSU is one throw away from making this a 1-score game. So on 3rd and 8, he takes this delay of game penalty, which felt exactly like what he would do with Brian Kelly. Again, he led the nation, in my opinion, in timeouts called that his coach was absolutely livid by, or delay of game penalties. And this first one was indeed a delay of game penalty on 3rd and 8. And Brian Kelly would just lose his mind on him in these situations, and understandably so. You're the son of a coach. This is your 5th year in college. You just can't have that lack of awareness in that spot. So in this spot, with a new play caller, new head coach, you see the same inexplicable casual nature that Nussmeier has, and it's just maddening to watch. And that sounds harsh, but what if I told you that after this happens in this very key spot in this game, he did it on the very next play? The very next play. All right, gets up there, and this time Frank Wilson decides, I'm calling timeout. I'm not about to make this 3rd and 18. I can't believe this guy just did this. So on 3rd and goal from the 13 now, because you are backed up 5 and you've burned a timeout in these 2 spots, Bama expectedly rushes 3, because that's all you have to do against the LSU offense with Garrett Nussmeier running it. But hey, what does Garrett Nussmeier do? Instead of doing the thing that you would hope a 5th-year starting quarterback, 2nd-year starter, but 5th year in college, you get what I'm saying. Instead of doing the thing that you would hope he would do, which is like step up in the pocket or basically just do anything that isn't spin into a sack, throw it into the dirt, throw it into your center's butt, do anything besides exactly what you do, which is somehow think you're going to spin out of this and spin directly into a sack for a 14-yard loss to the 27-yard line. Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. So unbelievably bad. The type of bad that if you saw your guy in Pop Warner football do it on your team, you would just be incensed. And I can't imagine what Frank Wilson was experiencing in those moments, having watched this all year, and then finally being able to be the one to provide the tongue lashing. And buddy, did he? And it was deserved. And that was the benching. And that's ultimately what led to it.
Yeah, it's like, what is your ideal case here? This guy thought he was, shoelace Nussmeier. He looked like it was like a Denard Robinson move where it was like, oh, I'm gonna do a double twist pivot into like pressure. And it's like, dude, you've never been that type of athlete to where you could turn your back to a guy and spin backwards into him and somehow just like create separation and do anything but just get a bear hug out of that. And yeah, I mean, believe it's consecutive LSU drives where they get into kind of like the first and goal situation. They're looking at the goal line and they finish out kicking a field goal outside of a goal to go situation, like outside of the 10, which is so crazy. Like you get, again, it just feels like the end zone is a million miles away, even when you're looking at it, because every play is a chance to just kind of move backwards or move sideways. And to your point, yeah, Brian Kelly did some tongue lashing, did some yelling. But I think that Garrett Nussmeier had gotten complacent in the thought of, yeah, coach is going to yell at me, but I'm still going to go back out there, so it doesn't matter. Honestly, it felt kind of cathartic to see him get benched because it was like, well, yeah, dude, this is probably what you've deserved, if not for the hate to credit Jeff Landry here, if not for the agent, if not for the paycheck, if not for him and Brian Kelly being on the same page as some things. Any fair and just coach would have taken him out way sooner than that.
Did Garrett Nussmeier get too used to tongue lashings? Was he numb to them at that point?
He was
Because you
into it
watch
a
his
little
face.
bit. He was like, okay, Brian, here it comes.
He's like, this can't hurt me. I don't even have to listen. I can just tune this out at this point. And look, it's a very complicated legacy. It is. And I'm struggling to even use the L word there. But I do think that if we're writing the Garrett Nussmeier story, or at least playing the how did this turn out the way that it did DVD, the documentary of sorts, you have to give him credit for staying at LSU after Ed Orgeron left, and staying at LSU when Jaden Daniels arrived, and staying at LSU when Brian Kelly is willing to push all of his chips into the middle to win a national championship in 2025. But man, did Garrett Nussmeier and LSU go broke. And I don't know what the monetary loss is going to be from an NFL draft standpoint. Obviously, he was taken care of from an NIL standpoint. I don't know if this is going to turn into a Quinn Ewers type situation where you're talking about a guy who came into the season, maybe he's showing up in these mock drafts kind of late first round. Nussmeier was more decorated than that. This was the Heisman Trophy favorite post week one. I know it's an August Heisman, make of it what you will, but he had still shown us enough to believe, all right, this cat is going places. He's doing really good things this year. But some of the
It was almost
numbers,
seen as a tank-worthy draft class for him and Arch. If you look at some of the conversations in the offseason where it was like, oh, these guys are almost guaranteed, because we had seen all the different stuff that Nuss had gone through with the different OCs and the chaos at LSU. And kind of the junior year was like the appetizer. It was like, well, it almost can't get worse than this because there were all these turnovers. The offense was a mess. The like parts of the offensive line were a mess. They went out and spent big in the portal. So the thought was like, okay, well, you really have nowhere to go but up. You have all these, coach's son, all these veteran years in the system. It's completely inexplicable. I've never, even like Carson Beck, I think it was a better player than this his last
way
year at
better.
Georgia. Yeah.
Way better. Carson Beck, at least, say what you will about the middle of the season when he was a walking interception, he at least came out of that. And if you look at the way that he finished at Georgia, he was riding his longest streak without an interception of his career. And the slow starts were very much still there. He was a tough guy to predict, but you could still at least bank on him to rally back in these games. With Nussmeier, you have no confidence whatsoever that he's going to rally back. Like, Nussmeier couldn't have pulled off what Carson Beck did against Georgia Tech last year. No way. But it did have a sort of similar sense of like, man, this just isn't going to happen, is it? Like this is not going to be right, and the numbers are going to be tough to stomach for anybody, myself included, that obviously had high expectations of Garrett Nussmeier. 7 passes of 30 yards this year, tied with DJ Lagway for 14th in the SEC. 12th in the SEC in quarterback rating. He's not going to have 2,000 passing yards unless like Michael Van Buren gets injured and they all of a sudden decide, oh, we got to bring out Garrett Nussmeier, which I don't even know why you do that at this point.
I see Colin Hurley.
Right? At this point, why would you send him out there? Why would you send him out there? And he's not going to finish with 7 yards per attempt. And the efficiency was just maddening to watch. And I know, not healthy. Bad play caller. Receivers ended up getting more banged up. But this is a total failure. It is a total failure, because if you're healthy enough to be out there, you can't be this bad. You just simply cannot be this bad. And he was that bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I think it was several weeks ago, certainly the A&M game, probably before that, where I stopped using injury as an excuse, because, like, kind of say what you will about Garrett Nussmeier, like when he takes that hit that we were just talking about in the double twist sack, it's like, usually I'm expecting a pick after that, where it's like, okay, he's rattled, he's going to throw it to nobody. Cool. We're not even at a point where he trusts himself to throw a pick, right? That's the scary thing, where it's like, we used to test the defense down the field. Could be a terrible throw, like in the Ole Miss game, where we just threw it right to that guy. But at least that stretches the defense, and it doesn't have the Kane Womack defense with just everybody hanging out over the middle waiting for a screen pass. And so, yeah, I mean, it becomes the player's fault at some point when you're a grown man. You talk about his years of service, whatever it would be, but you're an adult. You decided to come back. You decided to be the leader and the captain and wear number 18 and do all these things. And I know he's trying to do the right thing for LSU, and I see that he's trying to lead the team somewhere. But sometimes you got to be selfless to the point where you go, I'm making this team worse. And I think the kind of conspiracy with him and Brian Kelly, where it was like, hey, we're just going to pretend reality isn't reality. Yeah, it felt like you were kind of being gaslit a little bit. It's like, why would I be invested in this if I know how this is going to end?
It felt like we were watching the 2020 Mississippi State offense after it faced LSU.
Why would you do that? That doesn't even. What do you think my experience with the 2020 Mississippi State offense was? Like,
Good point. Good point. It felt like watching freshman Will Rogers have an offensive line that couldn't protect against a three-man rush, an offense that had no running game to even speak of or even pretend to roll out there against SEC competition. And it just felt like the easiest team in the world to defend. And Booger said on the halftime show, Alabama has a quarterback and Ty Simpson, and LSU is Garrett Nussmeier. And I misheard him. I thought originally he said that Alabama has a quarterback making NFL throws in Ty Simpson, and LSU has Garrett Nussmeier, which is slightly better. But you get what Booger, an LSU great, is saying. And he's gone through all of the roller coasters of this Garrett Nussmeier experience. And we don't really get into the NFL stuff a ton because I care so much more about appreciating these guys in college. Like if Diego Pavia never plays an NFL down, it's not going to change how I feel watching him in a given college football Saturday. But I'm just so bummed about how this chapter closed. Not because I wanted to be right and I wanted to be like, oh, see, this is why you should have gone all in with LSU. Like it's just beyond that. I just wish he could have dealt with whatever preseason injuries he had and maybe taken a medical red shirt, but and come back next year. Would that have changed things? Probably not, because you had all this portal spending that you were already all in with, right? And he still had Joe Sloan as the play caller with Brian Kelly as the head coach. So how much would this have changed? I don't know that things would have changed drastically for Garrett Nussmeier in another universe. And this just all unfolded in the worst, most awful possible way. If he had been just ruled out for the season, and if they just rolled out Michael Van Buren, is LSU sitting here right now with 2 losses and with playoff life?
I think this offense, whatever this offense is, definitely benefits from a mobile quarterback. And, I've said that a couple of times on here. I think, obviously it's better if you have Jaden Daniels in literally any offense in college football history, right? But like, that's what Jaden Daniels brought that I think was so underrated, was that he was the main facet of the run game, not just through scrambles, but through the fact that you had to defend the run game via him. And that's exactly what LSU doesn't present right now. But just to kind of like transition off of that point, because like I'm with you, it is ultimately, it's frustrating. It's a little sad when it comes to Garrett Nussmeier. I really do feel for the kid because I think he's number 18. He wants to put the team on his back and lead him. But you talked about that comp of 2020. What's interesting to me is this feels like an almost carbon copy of the 2 games, LSU Alabama 2020 and 2021, where you're in Tiger Stadium 2020. Now, granted, very different expectations for the 2020 LSU team at that point. I barely even watched that game honestly because I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was just not an interesting game. LSU just got throttled.
TJ Finley start that one?
I don't even remember.
I think he did.
Like that's the thing. I was like, I'm not even going to vet because I knew exactly what was going to happen. But 2021 was so much more frustrating. 2025 was so much more frustrating than 2024, a game that I was at with Omar the Tiger, because I knew that game was over probably by halftime, shortly after halftime. But it was this exact feeling of kind of helplessness where you have a great quarterback in Bryce Young in one case and Ty Simpson in the other case, that your defense is doing enough to limit them. Ty Simpson outside of FSU probably his worst game of the season, and LSU did nothing to capitalize on that, even though Alabama kept giving them opportunities. And I think what that really like speaks to is, shocker, Will. Wow, Kalen DeBoer versus an interim head coach. Coaching, discipline, execution. You look at the penalty yardage, this thing that we've given Alabama credit for over and over again about executing when it matters. They kept giving the ball back to LSU, and LSU wasn't doing anything with it. But the way that they were able to make the most of the second half chances, the way they were able to make the most of getting the extra field goal, like we talked about, whereas LSU was just kind of floundering. Even with Michael Van Buren, it felt like the end zone, it was a little bit more attainable, but they didn't end up getting there. And so that credit to Alabama for being a true rival to LSU and me, because it's like, this is the only game as a 31-year-old adult that I still feel that I'm sitting there going, wow, they'd really we had so many chances there. And the team wasn't good enough. And LSU only has themselves at this point to blame because you look at the roster and you look at the plays guys almost made, and you think, okay, we're a couple of things here away. And hey, hopefully the next head coach can figure that out.
We haven't really talked about this as much, but it's worth bringing up as we see Alabama and LSU going in totally opposite directions. But when we did the emergency pod after Nick Saban retired, the thinking was that the two teams who benefited the most from that was Georgia and LSU. What's the record against Alabama in these 2 years? It's
Not
0
a
4. It's 0 4. And you're now faced with this reset once again. And there wasn't any hope necessarily that, oh, you're just going to be able to build off some late season momentum. This is very different than like a 2016 situation with Coach O taking over for Les Miles. Like it's not that in this day and age in college football. I don't know that you can ever really expect it to be that at a big time program. I just don't know that exists anymore with the way that the portal works, how much these guys are getting tampered with, and all that stuff. Which we're going to get to Auburn in a little bit here, but there is just such a different sense
And
right
speaking of
now.
tampering on the Auburn, sorry.
Seriously. There's just such a different sense now of this reset. And Alabama has done its part to contribute to that. And seeing what it's like on that side when you have offensive coaches that seem to have a clue. And even in a bad offensive game, in which, again, Alabama struggled to move the ball against an LSU defense that's played its tail off in this game in ways that it did not against Texas A&M in the second half. Did so without Whit Weeks once again. Harold Perkins Jr. makes a big-time play on the strip sack and recovery of Ty Simpson. And you're just left wondering, man, how did all of this get to this point so quickly? Because it's inevitable, but it also is quick when you actually can step back and realize how expedited this timeline has been.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe this is a little bit of hopium. I mean, as I know as a Louisiana sports fan, things can always get worse, right? The Saints, the Pelicans, LSU. Thank goodness for Jay Johnson.
Woof.
It's rough, man, out here. But I don't know, man. Like I said, you're going with the dual box TV, and you look at Kentucky running all over Florida and all the opt outs. You look at LSU, and that hasn't happened quite yet. Maybe a lot of the players are waiting for this Bama game for kind of the opt outs, the quiet quitting. But I do feel like I said, it's like without Brian Kelly, it felt like this team was fighting until the end, and that was not true about Texas A&M. That's when I was worried. When I was worried is when I saw guys just kind of quitting and getting out physical in Tiger Stadium, and that just goes to show it's a mentality, right? A bye week doesn't make you that much less soft. It's just the mentality around the program, like some guys have talked about, has changed, and it feels like there's a little bit more pride in LSU. So as heartbreaking as this loss was, I think LSU had every reason to hang their heads, honestly, and get smoked by a playoff bound, SEC championship bound Alabama team. So I really do see the silver lining in this because, again, there is just so many excuses. These coaches are already probably not going to get the rules they're in. Everybody could have just phoned it in. And so to some degree, keeping it close with such a good team, kind of nice.
2 year two coaches right now seem like they are, I don't want to say bound for Atlanta, but that is certainly the case, at least for Alabama, with the way that the schedule sets up. Obviously, big time game against Oklahoma coming up. Need to avenge last year's loss, and then we can, I think, officially have those conversations. TBD on that. So let's get
That
to
would
the
be
other
the
side.
funniest outcome is if somehow Venables just owns DeBoer. Like, what if he just puts up
What if
like
he
another
does?
20, 30 point loss? But that's it. Like, that's his only thing. Like, Texas is a problem, but DeBoer.
Yeah, Oklahoma just runs for 250 yards, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, what is this happening all over again? Bama going in the Iron Bowl, fighting for its playoff life. Although Bama actually has enough quality wins at this point, where I
Bama's
do
in.
think even 9-3, like I think
Yeah,
Bama's in.
Bama's in.
I do. All right, Texas A&M, Mizzou. The 8-4 jokes are officially dead. Officially dead. Come up with a new A&M narrative. It's not so much a narrative. It's pretty. I mean, think about the fact that A&M had a regular season record of 8-4 in 7 of the last 12 seasons. More than 50%. That is more likely to happen than not that A&M was going to go 8-4. Aggies are 9-0, and it was so impressive what they did to win by 21 at Mizzou. Where, look, you got to remember that their only home losses since the start of 2023 came against Jade Daniels and Ty Simpson. And I totally get it's a true freshman quarterback in his first career start. Matt Zollers probably shouldn't have gone with the Jackson Dart eye black if you're going to complete 7 of 22 passes, in my critical opinion. Just throwing that out there.
Look good, feel good, play good. At least like the confidence.
I don't know. At halftime, maybe you scrub that thing off. You're like, I got to earn this by black. It was a mess for Mizzou trying to throw the football. Now they were still able to run the ball, but you see this A&M defense just feast. Not just Cassius Howell, who did have a strip sack in this one, but Brooks and Sanford, those guys were awesome. Marcel Reed made big time plays, and here's what I love. And this just speaks to Elko and what he's building right now, and why if you're not on board with what A&M is doing, and you're not necessarily a believer that Mike Elko is going to be like this 6-year culture changer, where like that's probably what it's going to take for people to truly think that A&M is like worthy of being in these top tier conversations in college football, which take time. I get that. But what I love is A&M's ground game had 23 yards on 16 carries in the first half of this one. Ground game that we said, look, this group is capable of doing a lot, albeit against a Mizzou defense that's top 15 in the country against the run. They have the fewest missed tackles of any program in college football. We've said a lot of really nice things about Mizzou's defense this year. So you're running into a really stout unit up front. And Elko still at halftime, they're up 14-0. And he calls out that group. I was like, yeah, we can't run the football, man. Like dude, you're up 14-0 on the road against top 25 team. Again, with the third string quarterback, true freshman in his first career start. But Elko is just sort of never happy, and not in a Saban way, but sort of in an exasperated way that his team isn't ever really doing what he wants it to do. And I've kind of always liked that about him. And then what happens in the second half? A&M runs for 220 with the only SEC offensive line that's had the same starting five all year. The 57-yarder from Ruben Owens was the dagger in this one. Just so versatile, and it's such a tough team to have to climb back against. And so many teams have found that out week in, week out. And I just thought that was really impressive. Again, not even a totally dominant 60-minute performance wherein Elko can still find the flaws of his team, but you look up and you're like, dang, you kind of won that game going away, and you went into their house and made sure that you were the aggressor and you were the team that was totally in control.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I just cautioned against box score watching, but I don't know if I've ever seen a rushing box score like this, where you look at the total and then you kind of like mentally add up the yards, and you're like, it almost doesn't make sense because there's so many ball carriers. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys got rushing attempts for Texas A&M in this game. Again, some of that game could be a little bit out of hand, but it's like Concepcion and like different guy like
DJ
Craver.
Smith's
Like,
doing really well too. He's making a nice step. The son of Emmett has been a really nice addition to their ground game that I did not think he would be as in as big of a role as he's been this year.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, kind of seeing two different philosophies here as far as Mizzou is one of the few true like bell cow. We got Ahmad Hardy, that's our guy, and I know that they kind of do split that too with Robert, so maybe it's more of like a two-headed attack, but that's still pretty like a school of thought. Whereas like A&M is on the exact other end, which is like you never know where this ball is going. I just cannot say enough good things about their like scheme and Colin Klein. That's why I'm so excited. Like I really hope A&M and Alabama play in the SEC championship game because I want to see these two offenses versus these two defenses. I think it would be so fascinating. Just it's the exact same feeling. It's like, hey, you have to guard 12 guys. Like you got to guard. You got to think about the receivers, but you got to think about them as runners. You got to think about the running backs, but you got to think about them as receivers. And so I think again, like to your point, looking at even the game flow of this one, it felt a little bit out of hand, but that is really a discredit to the Missouri defense, which has been a really stout unit. It's just hard to do that, when you get the quarterback play. But I say that to say this isn't just some random team. Mizzou has a lot of pride, and I think that the way that A&M was able to impose their will, particularly in the second half, and just make this never, ever in doubt, is just so impressive.
Mizzou was fighting for its playoff chances. They were still sitting there with 2 losses and a different set of circumstances than last year when we mocked Drink for saying that his team still had playoff life with 2 losses when he got waxed in those 2 losses and the resume wins were very much lacking. But, I do think that Mizzou was out there to try and do something that, again, it had not done in the playoff era, which is beat an AP top 10 team. And do so against an A&M team that it was trying to avenge last year's loss. That really rubbed them the wrong way. How much they felt like the officiating dictated the momentum swings in that game early on. It ended up being a lopsided A&M win, but some of like there was like a pass interference call that was ridiculous. There was like a downfield blocking call, and it was just like Mizzou couldn't get anything right. In the first part of this game, Drink is like looking up. He's doing the interview with Katie George, and he's saying, "Oh yeah, we got to look at the fouls so far. Like we've been called for 4, and they haven't been called for any yet." Like this eats at Mizzou. So this definitely was not a situation where they just realized, oh, we got a third string quarterback. No. Like Mizzou showed up with bad intentions for this game, and they were ready to go. Like they were definitely ready to go. And on the A&M side, Will, nobody's going to talk about this stat, but I need to bring it up because we're at the territory where with A&M we shouldn't compare anything to Manziel. With Auburn, with anybody, we shouldn't compare anything to Cam. But the stat really is indicative of the year that A&M has had. This is the first time since Johnny Manziel's Heisman season that A&M has had 9 regular season wins. Think about that, okay? 9 regular season wins, not just 9 wins total, because 2020 they got to 9 wins by winning the bowl game. Same with 2018, which was year 1 of the Jimbo Fisher era, and then 2013, Manziel's second season. But this is the first time since Johnny Manziel won the freaking Heisman Trophy in A&M's inaugural season in the SEC that they have won 9 regular season games, okay? Jimbo Fisher never got to 9 regular season wins with all that money. Yeah, the COVID games canceled. He probably would have gotten there. You get what I'm saying? But Elko needed 2 years to get there. A&M is 4-0 in true road games. And, Elko answered a question afterwards where he's kind of asked about how have you been able to kind of overcome, these issues on the road? And he's like, well, I know I showed up with A&M having these road issues. They had lost 10 consecutive road games when he showed up. But this is a team, we're well beyond that. Like they are so far beyond that just simply winning a road game anymore doesn't do anything to this team. They could be more critical, and understandably so. They have 6 road wins during Elko's tenure. Jimbo had 7, okay? But 4 of them were in front of COVID crowds. So make of that what you will. You want to call them half road wins, whatever. Maybe you could argue that Mike Elko's already got him. But what's very, very
PPR.
Yeah, seriously, a half-point PPR situation. What's undeniable at this point is that Mike Elko is already going to be remembered as a better A&M coach than Jimbo Fisher. We're not even to the end of year 2, and I feel very comfortable saying that. And I may or may not have, but definitely made that determination on the fake punt that he called 21-7. Mizzou's about to get the ball back. You're deep in your own territory, and just brilliant to have that call. I think it was Brooks who had that run, the former high school running back, but just huge cojones to call that in that spot. I'm like, Jimbo never would do that. There's no way Jimbo had the guts to make that call in that spot, or at least to be able to execute it. But man, A&M just won its third road win against a ranked team this year. And I tip my cap, man. I want to respect what this team has done, regardless of how this turns out.
I'm right there with you. I think the best way I could put a bow on all of this, like what you just said there, is okay. Let's go back to last year's Mizzou A&M game. Remember that was the game that Drink famously potentially sent his own player a blanket. Said that was
the Will Lee blanket. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, I should have brought that. That's a good point, Will. Where Drink is trying to play mind games with the A&M thing, and he's like, the fake blanket thing was all time Drink cringe. If you want to be a Drink hater, my rule is you can't bring up his dorkiness. You have to bring up the sending a blanket to your own player to try and play mind games with him to think A&M was trying to troll you.
Yes, and that was wild. But I would say I think that's such a great encapsulation of how far Texas A&M has come. Because I will say this, and again, not to anybody, but just generally, if I were to give advice to Drink, there is not a coach in the SEC that you should try that less on than Mike Elko. Like I don't care. Even like a Kirby Smart, because he'll talk back to you.
Yeah.
Mike Elko, this is like an elephant bird rivalry. This is like he is flying around Mike Elko, and Mike Elko is just like, wow, it just doesn't even care. And that's like the worst thing to be, because I always joke about the opposite of love isn't hatred, it's indifference. That's exactly where Mike Elko is here. He's like, I'm not here for the games. I'm not here to get in a little spat. So you want me to get into a back and forth with you, or we have quotes and we have all this. I am here to smoke you and go home. And that is the exact opposite of what Texas A&M, who had a fake championship printed with an open date on it that they might fill now. It just goes to show, A&M used to be a lot of sizzle. Now they're just all steak. Now it's all Elko is such a no-nonsense guy. Now he's a guy who's petty within the course of a game. And that's the type of guy that I like. He's the type of guy that with his actions will troll you back. And that's the worst way to be trolled, is when you talked about the fake punt. You talk about, who has the ball now? You could just see him toying with people like this. He's just a football evil genius. And again, it's not about the quotes. It's not about the press. You can tell that he's not the biggest fan of the media and kind of the games Yeah, there's the Lane Kiffin way and there's the Mike Elko way, and those are complete opposites. And like I said, he's just like it's almost like he's perplexed by someone like Drake, who's like, "Why are you doing this to me?" Whereas again, Jimbo was all about that. He was about the folksiness, the recruiting, the gimmicks, and this is the most serious A&M team of my life. I mean, it's the most businesslike. They're not casual.
No
It's not.
nonsense.
This is joyless murder ball. Like this
Yeah.
right here is joyless murder ball, where it's like we're gonna sing our fight song in your stadium after the game is won, but we're not gonna sit here and do anything else. Like this is what, and the fact that A&M has been such a joke since they got to the SEC outside of A&M, it's fitting for them. It really is. Like this is a no nonsense. There's nothing to laugh at. A cry is what you'll be doing.
If you are rooting for Tortured Aggie Syndrome, the great SEC Shorts character, if you want to see that character show up and you're just over it with A&M, you're one of those people that's like, college football is worse when A&M is good.
I saw that tweet. That was a great tweet where the guy's like, nobody talks about the one team that they're worse when college football is good as A&M.
If you are that person and you need some hater fuel, this is the scenario that you need to root for. Okay. A&M gets to that regular season finale game in Austin against Texas at 11-0. Texas gets there having beaten Georgia, and they're sitting there with still 2 losses. Texas fighting for its playoff life, just kind of like what A&M was last year. A&M loses that game to miss out on the SEC championship. But at that point, 11-1 A&M, you're hosting a college football playoff game. Texas then, by virtue of not getting punished for getting to the SEC championship or being 10-2 and being left out of the SEC championship, there is some way in which A&M then has to face Texas again. It's within the realm of possibility, if you look at these scenarios, that it could happen. Would I predict it would happen? No, because I think like 4 different things would probably have to line up even for us to go into Selection Sunday with the possibility of wondering if the selection committee would do that. But I have at least opened myself up to that, not because I want to see Aggie fans tortured. I was on with my guy David Nuno earlier in the week, and I'm happy for them for being able to feel joy and not just be the butt of 8-4 jokes for once. But I did start thinking of that and wondered, from a content standpoint, is that the most chaotic thing that can happen for this A&M season over the course of the next month?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a pretty entertaining thing, and I do love the preserved rivalries that kind of came from these Southwestern conferences. They've kind of been different places, as far as Oklahoma, Texas, whatever. But I think it's pretty cool to have that regionalism and know that these two teams, again, like Texas is in. A&M's fight song is about Texas, which is so wild to me. I don't think there's another one like that. I don't feel like getting into it right now, but it's just kind of funny. But
Dixieland
it's like,
Delight, is that about Tennessee, right?
so I've thought about that. I actually
Not a
compared
fight
those
song.
two. I've thought about that, like in comparing these two fight songs. The beauty about Dixieland Delight is it's basically like we hate these 3 teams, and if you're not in this song, we don't care about you. Whereas the A&M fight song is very much just like Texas, 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 and I think that is a little bit different. But that being said, having both of these teams be good at this, how about this? College football is better when rivals are on equal ground. I think that's the best way. If rivals are 6-6, if rivals are 12-0, these two rivals right now are on equal ground with things to play for.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of fun when you see the rival that's got just an interim coach, nothing to lose, almost Pat Narduzzi-ish with their approach. They're going for every 4th down. They don't care that they're on their own 35-yard line and it's 4th and 4. They're going for it. I don't know. Like there's something to be said for that too. And I think that still makes for a competitive game, but I totally get what you're saying. A&M's playoff chances, A&M, if they were to miss out on the college football playoff at this point, we would be making movies about it. Meanwhile, Mizzou watched its playoff chances come to an end, and this felt like it was over after Vandy. Definitely over now, obviously, with 3 losses. And look, it's a missed opportunity for Mizzou. It is. And I don't know how many people are going to be talking about this because it's just easier to put Mizzou on the back burner and just pretend that they're irrelevant. But the schedule set up really well. You were top 20 in the country in percentage of returning defensive production from a really good unit last year. And you had this portal class that really hit in a lot of different areas. And you felt like you had a guy in Bo Prabula. You had one of the nation's best running backs in Ahmad Hardy. You had an offensive line that had a lot of key pieces, like all SEC level pieces on it. And you had a year 3 OC who is now interviewing for head coaching jobs. We'll see if Kirby Moore gets the Arkansas job. But, like there was this sense of urgency with this Mizzou team because you just don't know how many times schedule is going to line up this way. But playing for your playoff life with a third string quarterback, obviously, those expectations are going to be limited unless you're 2014 Ohio State. So take that for what it is. The questions now will pivot to Drink's future. And what does it
Wait,
look like?
really quick. Before you pivot on that, I will say, again, this is not hopium, this is not copium, but when your passing offense looks like that, I think you're just dead in the water. I think that after watching the
Totally.
Vandy game, I think that was as good as that team could be post Prbula, kind of like within the context of that game. They would have had to win that game for me to feel like, okay, you have a little bit to play with where you can figure this out. But unfortunately, I just do think their playoff hopes or their kind of successful season hopes, their potential for not having a disappointing season with how well they started ended with Prbula's injury, because I think they just don't have the horses. And like I sometimes talk about, it's like sometimes the worst thing is to limp into a big game and then just get demolished by a better team. So this is kind of I think a mercy killing by A&M, but you can say as Mizzou, like, hey, when we had Prbula, things were different. But I think this is like a quarterback injury is one of the very few things that you can truly go, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, you can run it back with Prbula, though, next year. Ahmad Hardy's not even draft eligible yet. He's going to probably be in line for some sort of raise. And, TBD on what you're going to do with your coordinators. But again, like, this is all determined on what's Drink's future, because this was year 6 at Mizzou. And this isn't a hot seat question. This is what is he value, and how is he valued by others? Those are the two things that this will come down to. Does he feel like he has taken Mizzou as far as it can go? And again, he's not going to say any of that publicly. He's going to end every single public appearance with an MIZ, and he's going to be the brash guy that he's always been. So, like, that's not changing. I mean, from a standpoint of how does he truly feel truth serum, and how does the market feel about him? Does the market feel like, you know what, he's doing great things there, but we're not necessarily going to elevate him to get one of these big time jobs? I don't know. And that's the question that's going to be answered. And now that Mizzou is officially out of the playoff conversation, it's kind of going to dominate it. And there's really not a whole lot that Mizzou could do about this. And I don't know how much, like, if you're a Mizzou fan, what are you rooting for? Are you rooting for Drink to get a raise to stay at Mizzou and all of a sudden be in the $10 million club? Is that what you want? Like, I don't really know what the best outcome is. Ideally, you kind of just pick up where you left off. Nobody hires him. You don't necessarily feel like you have to give him a raise. You have another great portal class. You show that you can recruit there, and then you just kind of run it back with this offensive core. You're going to have a lot of new pieces on defense, but I don't know. Like, I just think that this was a missed opportunity, and now a lot of questions are going to be asked about this team.
It's not like I know Drink personally, so I think that's kind of an introspective question. I will say this about Drink: he is a little bit of that mold. And we kind of saw this a little bit with like Dan Mullen at times, where it's like he's not good at keeping things close to his vest. Let me put it to you like that. Like, I don't think he has an awesome poker face, that Drink. Like, say what you will, but he's himself kind of all the time. And so it's going to be very interesting to kind of read between the lines of some of his quotes. What's up?
But here's a question I would ask to that, because
Okay.
you're right, there are similarities there. Did we ever get the sense in 2017 that Dan Mullen would be eager to leave for a place like Florida?
Yes.
You got that sense in 2017, you felt like?
I mean, I just with the history there and everything, like I felt as soon as that job started to come open, you just started looking at them. I felt like that was the most logical, even almost more so than Kirby Smart to Georgia, where it was like, well, he's just going back there, with AD and everything.
An AD who didn't want to hire him initially and was like 4th on his list, which is always weird to look back on with Scott Strickland and Dan Mullen given their time together at Mississippi State. But yeah, I don't know that we're going to get a whole lot of indicators from Drink. I don't. I think seeing his name floated out there, though, is probably the best indicator that we're going to get.
Yeah.
That's the way this works.
And I think to your point, just to like put a bow on that, is it's like it's such a puzzling thing. It's almost like you're in the exact 0, 0, like you're right in the middle of everything as Mizzou, because your time in the SEC, you've had a couple of early SEC championship game appearances. You've also had recent success under Drink in these last couple of years. You have struggled under Odom. You've struggled under Drink. So we really don't know what. I mean, I guess this is it. It's all of that, and that equates to about 0, where it goes. You have the potential to be a bad team like we saw under Odom. You have the potential to be a team that does exactly what Drink did, where it goes, okay, we got a Brady Cook. We can land some of this in-state talent, some of the Luther Burdens. We can develop some of these defensive guys. Like, that's what their staple has been, even under Odom and like back in the day, like it's always been about develop the kind of local interior or like front seven defensive guys. And so that being said, in the NIL era, can you win there, and how much does Drink value that? I really think is between his ears, because you could certainly sell me, especially with a football coach mentality. Hey, we could just do this whole thing again from a couple of years ago. Look at the way they were able to hit on Trader. Look at the way they were able to do some recruiting things, which they've been picking up on lately. And it's all about the pressure, right? Do you want the expectations of a Florida job or an LSU job, or are you happy at Mizzou where you can have some of these goofy, weird losses and people still go, all right, cool, we're happy to not be where we were?
And make $9 million a year. That's a key caveat too. All right, Auburn, Vandy. Diego Pavia still owns Auburn, even without Hugh Freeze. This game was wild. Absolutely
I love
bananas.
this game. This is one of my favorite SEC games of the year. I love this game so much.
And I was skeptical that we were going to get this because I talked about how much this Vandy offense had kind of been sputtering the last two games, with the exception of the way that they rallied back with 4 minutes left against Texas, and the fact that Auburn's offense, was Auburn's offense. But Auburn led by 2 touchdowns in this one, and Vandy ends up winning in overtime after Auburn tries to get it to Cam Coleman, who was just totally bracketed. They dropped CJ Hurd into coverage.
Credit to them for finally covering Cam Coleman with more than one person. When he gives up the dope touchdown and then the 2-point conversion, 3 strikes, you're out, kid.
I don't want to say that Clark Lee would have had to hand in his resignation letter if he didn't cover Cam Coleman with at least 2 guys in that spot.
Clark Lee was going to come off that bitch like the Bama player, that race game or whatever, just tackle Cam Coleman. He was so sick of that guy.
Clark Lee would have fired himself at that point. He would have. Diego Pavia-Cam Coleman, man. Let's just have those 2 guys go back and forth same time next week. Let's just do that. Just fill in the other pieces, not to minimize the other pieces, but man, they were balling. It'd be fun to see them just play on a weekly basis. Don't bring Hugh Freeze, for the love of God. Do not bring Hugh Freeze. Leave him on the golf course. What do you think Freeze thought as he was sitting there, in his golf cart? Maybe he's got Wi-Fi, maybe he doesn't on his phone. Probably got 5G. I don't want to get into a conversation about Hugh Freeze and his cell phones, but as he's checking scores and he's seeing that one of his 3 play callers, Derek Nix, leading this type of offensive effort, which is just everything that Auburn fans hoped they would get this year against an actual real defense, moving the ball up and down the field, 527 yards of offense. As Justin Hokanson, friend of the show, pointed out, the most yards that Auburn has had in an SEC game since 2019. A certain Joe Moorhead was on the other side of that. We don't need to get into it. But the first game without Hugh Freeze, Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton combined for 21 catches for 245 yards. And it was essentially what the Bengals did after they have the Jake Browning benching and they give it to Joe Flacco and they tell Joe Flacco, hey, you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on your team. Just throw it up to them. We'll take care of everything else. Not really, because our defense sucks and we're terrible, but just throw the ball to those 2 guys and worry about nothing else. Okay.
Bro, what's so funny? In the age of like, okay, we got orbit motions in every play, and we got 2 high safeties. Okay, like there's like this game of calculus and all the time, and then you go, hey, maybe they should just throw the ball to Cam Coleman more, and then they throw a goal line fade in the year of our Lord 2025, and it works, and you go, maybe it sometimes is that simple. Maybe you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Get 3 offensive coordinators. Maybe this is college football. Tell that dude to run a slant, then tell him to run a sluggo. That's it.
The game-tying score that he had was just insane. I have no idea how Cam Coleman saw that football, how he got his arms around. That is body control that even people at the next level should look at and go, oh my God, how many receivers in the NFL could make that play in that spot with the lack of vision? He's unbelievable. And the 2-point conversion, by the way, to tie it was also insane. It just followed it up right afterwards. I don't know where Cam Coleman is playing football next year, but he will be paid a ton of money to play football wherever that is. And if you are just looking at the numbers with Cam Coleman, you need full context, because this is the full context. This game was it. This is someone who signed up to play for Hugh Freeze, who promised him, we will throw the football. We will get a quarterback in here. Your talents will be maximized. And then what do you know? The first game that he's gone, career highs in both catches and receiving yards, and everything that we thought we would get from Cam Coleman in 2025 was on display with a different coach. And I'm baffled. And DJ Durkin afterwards, he's getting emotional talking about, Auburn just blatantly having its roster getting tampered with, and they're getting calls from all these other coaches, and these guys stuck together and they rallied for one another. That's all well and good. That's all well and good. And for that team internally, like that's fine. Every coach in America should be tampering for Cam Coleman right now. And if you're not tampering for Cam Coleman, Um, fire your coach. Just fire them, because clearly they don't care. Is Dabo Swinney the only coach that's not actively tampering for Cam Coleman? Maybe. He probably.
What are his grades looking like?
What? Tell me about this young man's character. His character is he catches footballs in ways that aliens wish they could catch footballs. Is that good enough for you?
No, he's got to be early to meetings. He's got to be the first one in the building, the last one up. Anyway, okay, so just everybody is going to get mad at this, but take this with a grain of salt, okay?
Are you about to suggest what we were talking about yesterday during this game?
No.
Okay.
If you think your team's wide receiver is better than Cam Coleman, it is a testament to your coaching staff. That's the nicest way I could say that. Because
Jeremiah Smith better than Cam Coleman. I'll give Ohio State.
Probably.
Carnell Tate on his best day could go back and forth with Cam Coleman. That's about all. That's about it.
They talk about when preparation meets opportunity. Cam Coleman just hasn't had the opportunity. I'm mainly speaking on SEC fans though, like a Chris Brazzell. I've been blown away with that guy. I've been singing his praises since forever. Great player. That is a testament to your coaching staff that we're allowed to discuss him as being better, and he will be. I don't even think Cam Coleman's going to get like all SEC anything this year based on his numbers because he hasn't had the opportunity. Cam Coleman has the body control and ball tracking of like a tiny wide receiver, like a Steve Smith, with the body of like a massive like receiver, like a true like alpha TO size receiver with the body control of a tiny guy who has to fight and scrap and claw to get open on every play. It is so crazy how they've been throwing him these ducks every year, and he is finding a way to like catch them like a fly with one hand on the chopsticks. It's like so nuts. And so again, like be happy that this guy has not been utilized if he's not on your team, and be happy with your coaching staff that you've made your guys look better than him. Because again, I don't think he'll end up with all SEC, even if they finish really strong, because there have been so many good receivers in the SEC. Both the A&M guys deserve some credit for all SEC. Talked about Brazzell. Like there have been, and I'm sure I'm missing a ton of guys going up and down the SEC. There's some great receivers, as there often are, but this dude is just such a freak. And like, we weren't wrong about him. We were just right about Auburn.
And that's the most depressing thing ever. This is just such an injustice to watch what this guy is capable of doing when he actually gets a quarterback that wants to throw him the football and a play caller that wants to dial up looks for him. And yeah, like it looks really bad in hindsight that Ashton Daniels, there could have been an earthquake going on to his right on that last play. He was throwing Cam Coleman the football. He did not care that CJ Hurd dropped into coverage. It was, look, man, this is the move in this spot. And I looked at Eric Singleton at the bottom of the screen. I wondered, do you think what's the percentage Eric Singleton, who had a monster day in this one, career day for him as well? I wonder what percentage chance did he give himself to be targeted on this play, knowing that Cam Coleman was on the field at the same time? Single digits, 8% chance he gave himself, and that's just because he's a competitor and he's a dog and he thinks he should get the ball every time. But even he knows Cam Coleman's getting the ball, and it's not going to matter what's on the other side of the field.
Kyler, let me tell you something insane I just realized. So Cam Coleman has 4 career 100-yard receiving games. Okay?
3 of them are at least in November or later, correct?
Yes. But, well, let me double check that, because one's in October here, one's in November here. Let's see, live math. Okay, yes, that's accurate. 3 of them are in overtime. So he has the one non-overtime one, ULM, 8 catches, exactly 100 yards. The 3 SEC games have been 4 OT against Texas A&M, 2 OT against Mizzou, a loss, and OT against Vandy. They have been unable to get him a 100-yard receiving game, except for against ULM, in regulation.
He had it in regulation in this one, to be fair.
You're right. And like, again, you could kind of go, did he have it before that in those other games? I don't know. I could just, again, like look back at the game logs, because it's hard to tell when you hit that mark. But it's not like I'm looking at any of these box scores going, wow, he had a dominant game in a standard game. They've all been these crazy, insane, like you have to target Cam Coleman because you have no other option.
You should not need overtime to get to that place for Cam Coleman to get to the century mark. Agreed. Okay, the team that won. One of the best performances we've seen by a player on a losing team all year. Like, it really was. I know that people are sick of hearing about Diego Pavia. Okay, we talk about him every single week. But there's going to come a time, and I don't know when this is going to be, if this is going to be 2028, if it's going to be 2031. I don't know. I'm old. I'm going to forget these things. But there's going to come a time when he's going to eventually leave college, I think, and I'm just going to want more Diego Pavia. I'm just going to want more. And I'm going to be frustrated with quarterback play on a given Saturday. I'm going to say, this guy doesn't have juice. This guy thinks that he can make these plays, and he really can't. And Diego Pavia just can, and he could do all of these things. He was unreal. He got off to another slow start, but he was unbelievable in this game. Not as slow as Texas, but slow enough to fall behind by 2 touchdowns and then just get every blade of grass that he wanted after that. They brought it up on the broadcast, and I've probably not done a good enough job of mentioning this, but when he is healthy, he does such a good job of throwing to his left. Like one of these throws that he made, I think it was to Trey Alexander, that he made on the left sideline as he's going to his left. The body control, we just talked about the body control with Cam Coleman, but the body control that he had to square his shoulders up and make this downfield throw on the move, he's just remarkable. He's just remarkable, man. Like first Vandy player ever to have 300 passing yards and 100 rushing yards in a game, 489 yards of offense and 4 total touchdowns is good against air. Much less against the defense that was one of 3 units in college football that had not allowed 25 points in a game this year. This Auburn defense had been incredible, and he just carved him up. You're not going to stop me unless it's 4th and 1. And he said afterwards he was cramping on that play. People just ripped Clark Lee for it because it looked like it was going nowhere. I kind of think he picks it up if he's not cramping on that play. Did you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I see that's like not the Diego Pavia I know. That's crazy. These crap. Like, come on, bro. You cooked. Don't say that.
Kind of looked like he tripped over his own feet. Regardless, and it's a play that Vandy doesn't make in that spot, and all of a sudden in a tie game at the very end, it looks like Auburn could potentially go down the field, but just a lack of urgency. That final drive from Auburn was really, really weird with how much offensive success they had to that point. But he carved up this really good Auburn defense, and maybe DJ Durkin being saddled with head coaching duties kind of led to some of this. He talked about being able to delegate this week. It's really difficult to juggle play calling duties while you're trying to become, while you're trying to be a head coach and do all that stuff. And so we talked about kind of shifting some of those duties internally. But man, like the coverage bust that they had with the Trey Alexander play where there was nobody within 20 yards of him. That's also like, that's in part because of the breakdown that Auburn had defensively, like no doubt, but Vandy was running tempo and doing things that they hadn't really done this year. And I just tip my cap to Tim Beck, who deserves to be part of the Broyles Award conversation. Will, can we talk about Tim Beck for a second?
Which one? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's good.
Great question, because if you just Google Tim Beck, you'll see the one that we've talked about more than the other one on this show, the one who's the head coach at Coastal Carolina, who has had just a wild career. But no, the Tim Beck, that's the offensive coordinator at Vandy, who's on the other side of 60. This man started his college football career at Dodge Community College in 1983. Will, do you know the phrase "get out of Dodge"?
Oh my gosh, is that what it's from?
That is from Dodge, Kansas. Yes. Okay.
Dodge, Kansas. Is that like the Dodge Ram?
No, it's just I don't think it's. I think I think they're 2 different things. I think they're 2 different.
It's a sick word. I didn't know "get out of Dodge" was like a real place. I thought it was like a movie euphemism. Okay.
One of my brother's college baseball teammates got sent to play in summer ball there, and it was, let's just say, with all due respect to Dodge, Kansas, let's just say it was not exactly the Redwoods League or the Cape Cod League when you're going to Dodge, Kansas. All right,
it sounds like the movie Holes a little bit. Anyway,
Dodge City, by the way, yeah, Dodge City. We should. I need to be perfectly clear. Dodge City, Kansas. That's what we're talking about here. So Tim Beck transfers to Pittsburgh State after starting off his college football career there, which is also in Kansas, and also where one Sam Pittman went to college, Pittsburgh State. In Kansas. I need to repeat that. It is in Kansas, okay?
The Gorillas.
Yes, the Gorillas. You real ones know. From 1985 to 2019, okay, he was at Pittsburgh State in MIAA, which is the SEC of Division II. And I know that because of the time that I spent at Nebraska Kearney, like the same conference. It is a respected Division II football conference. Nonetheless, it is a Division II school that he was at for 35 seasons, okay? He went from player to GA to SA, student assistant, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, head coach. Wild. 35 years, part of that program. Resigns at the end of 2019. They've kind of, this thing has run its course a bit. He'd been there for, 35 years. You're thinking he's going to do the things that most 55-year-olds do, which is retire. But no, he decides after the COVID year, he's going to take an analyst role at TCU. Okay. And then New Mexico State offensive coordinator, and then Vandy OC. This man is a legend. Okay. He is a legend. Diego Pavia would not be doing this with a bad play caller. If Diego Pavia had Joe Sloan out there, Will, we're seeing flashes. We're not seeing this. And we're seeing this because Tim Beck is a genius. And there's a reason why Clark Lee restructured his staff a couple of years ago the way that he did to bring Tim Beck over, and why this was a package deal with Pavia, with Stowers, who also was insanely good yesterday and is making a real case that he should win the Mackey Award as the best tight end in college football. But I just think Tim Beck is the guy that we need to remember with all of these Pavia conversations, because he is doing things to respected SEC defenses that just have them befuddled. And I wonder how long these plays, they have just been cooking at the Division II level, just waiting to be shown on this stage.
It's nuts, man. And you got to feel like he's doing it for the love of the game, which makes this kind of confusing in the modern ecosystem. Because it's like the thought is like, hire this guy. But it's like, I don't know if he'd even really, like, he's 61. Like, what does he have left to do? He's already been a head coach. He's kind of just chilling. Like, it's like a pastime for him, right?
But you should, if you're one of these bigger programs, and I'm thinking of a guy like John Summerall right now, who's a defensive minded coach. Whoever he brings on as his OC, if he does leave Tulane, if he takes one of these SEC jobs, you're going to be paying top dollar to be able to get someone like that. And I'm curious what that's going to look like if Tim Beck, if indeed Diego Pavia is out of eligibility, TBD on that, and if he is indeed looking for kind of his next thing, if that's just what he's going to do in his 60s. Like, he's essentially a European backpacker at this point, who's just like, I'm just going to be a free spirit. Just take me wherever the wind blows. He clearly has loyalty to Vandy. Okay. So I'm not trying to dismiss that. He clearly has loyalty to Vandy, but just in terms of what's his next quarterback going to look like? Is Clark Lee going to let him just kind of handpick from the portal and they're just going to pay top dollar? Like, Tim Beck has become a really interesting person in this conference in a short period of time. And I bet there are very few people outside of Andy that could actually pick him out of a lineup. He's not even the most famous Tim Beck.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'd be like, I don't know, as I'm looking at this resume, and like, this is so funny. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just assuming here, but like, you're a married guy, right? Like imagine this, right? It's like, hey, okay, I've been at Pittsburgh State this entire time. I'm a lifer. Okay, I'm going to retire post 2019. Not even because of COVID. Okay,
just resign. Resign was what he labeled. I don't think he officially said retire, but I think you assume retire when it's 35 years at a program and you're 55.
Exactly. It's like, okay, like after COVID, I got bored, I've been in the house. Like, oh, honey, like I'm just going to be an offensive analyst. Like, it's no big deal. Like, we just, I'm going to be there. We're going to be with the boys. I want to be on a team, impact young men. Maybe I don't want to be a school teacher or anything. I'm Tim Beck, like whatever. It's like, okay, well, like, don't freak out, but I got this OC job. But it's like a New Mexico State. Like, you love New Mexico.
You like green chilies, right? You've seen Breaking Bad. You
exactly. Like, there's the sunsets. There's like, come on, like, let's go down there. Okay, so this is like, okay, just stay with me. It's gonna be okay. I got a job in the SEC. I've wanted this my whole life. Like, I know I'm a little bit older. I know I've been out of here, but like, it's it. Vandy, Nashville's awesome. Like, it's gonna be great. We're gonna be there. Okay, I got bad news. I got a call from the University of Arkansas. They really, $8 million. Like, we could do a lot with $8 million. And like, I'm laughing so hard. It's like a Miss Terry situation. It's like, just give me like a little bit more. Like, it's so hard to get out of football when you just keep winning and keep succeeding. And I feel for him and his family, because it's like, you see where he had his story, he had ridden off into the sunset, and he just keeps winning. He keeps being successful. Awesome dude. Good for him.
What a late life renaissance for this dude. Just incredible, and was such a big part of that game, has been a huge part of these last 2 years. And if Clark Lee does leave his alma mater and take another job, again, I don't think he will do that. I think he is happy at Vandy. I think he really wants to build this program, and I think there's a place in his heart that he'll always have for Vandy. So I don't think he's leaving. But if that scenario existed, Buddy's taking Tim Beck with him. He's like, Tim Beck, we are a package deal at this point. This is kind of like a Dabo Sweeney, Brent Venables situation. We're lockstep, he and I. And if we can get Diego Pavia another year of eligibility, that'd be great. That would just be fantastic. Let's work on that. Let's see if we can do that.
He would literally be Uncle Rico at that point. And I say that to say, though, actually, now that you say that, it's almost like there is no bargain bin option where it's like, okay, well, if you're Arkansas, you could just go get Tim Beck. It's almost like, I think at this point, you would have to go get Clark Lee and have him come over, because I think where he's at right now is so dope that it's like, hey, it would have to be the situation where Clark Lee leaves, because I don't think you would want to start over again at this point. I just don't know what's in there for him. But anyway, just good for him, man.
Good for him. He's getting a raise. He's getting a raise somewhere. And I think he's got a lot of great football left. And I love watching the Tim Beck offense. It's been fun.
Vandy, bye week with his wife's name on it soon.
Yeah. Oh, very soon. She's getting more than a boat, man. She's getting more than a boat. Vandy has a bye week, and then Kentucky at home, and then Tennessee and Neyland. We're running out of Saturdays to rule Vandy out of the playoff conversation. Crazy. Yeah. 2 wins away. 2 wins away from the college football playoff. That's where we're at. All right. Georgia, Mississippi State. It took me a minute to realize what was so familiar about this game, which ended up very, very lopsided in favor of the visiting Dogs. And I don't just mean when Georgia stole the punt substitution play from Notre Dame that it used last year in the Sugar Bowl when Marcus Freeman had Kirby Smart just befuddled, totally outcoached in that moment. And it was a key pivotal sequence in that game to extend that Notre Dame drive. This game was Kirby Smart treating Jeff Lebby like he's Josh Heupel. That's exactly what happened here. And it's Josh Heupel disciple, Jeff Lebby. So it works out. Pre-2025, Josh Heupel, with the way that Georgia and Tennessee matchups have gone. Opening script touchdown, and then just all Dogs, visiting Dogs. Beatdown. Absolute beatdown. This was a throwback SEC win in a game that I did not think would be a throwback SEC win. Entering Saturday, and I realized we had 2 of these wins on Saturday with the way that Florida and Kentucky played out. But entering Saturday, here were the SEC road wins or I guess this was an SEC road. That Florida, Kentucky was an SEC road win, so disregard that. But entering Saturday, these were the SEC road wins by at least 20 points this year. Texas A&M at LSU. Yep, 49-25. Vandy at South Carolina, 31-7. Tennessee at Kentucky, 56-34. Georgia felt more dominant than all of those, at least from a 60-minute standpoint, from a complete game standpoint. And I realize there are probably some moments late in the second quarter where this could have gone differently. The dropped Fluff Bothwell play on 4th down, huge play in this game. And Georgia was just kind of off to the races after that. The middle 8 did no favors for Mississippi State. But this, I don't know, would you agree with that? This game for Georgia felt more dominant than any of those 3 wins that SEC teams had on the road by at least 20 points?
I'd say it like this. Those other teams had something they could point at and say, we did this well. Like LSU was leading at half against A&M. They got the doors blown off in the second half. They had a blocked punt. They had 2 picks on Reed. Like they had done things well. Cutter Boley looked awesome in the Tennessee game. I mean, that probably carried momentum to this week, right? Mississippi State, it's like, where do we go from here? Like when you allow that long touchdown the way that they did, it's like, dude, like you're at home. Like all your friends are watching.
They were, but they were not watching in the second half of this game.
Yeah, good point. Maybe they're not.
Yeah, they cleared out early, and it's a bummer because it was a big time atmosphere. You got a top 5 team coming in there, and you're trying to beat a top 5 team for the first time in the post Dak Prescott era, which is a stat that I should have brought up in the preview pod, but instead Kirby Smart did the thing that he's done 47 consecutive times, which is beat an unranked team, and the ground game for Georgia was totally dominant. Totally dominant. It felt like some late 2010s Georgia running game vibes because the only thing that gave Mississippi State life after that opening drive that they had where they marched in the field, scored against Georgia, the only thing that really gave them life was maybe getting a little too cute with the Dylan Bell red zone carry that turned into a fumble. I thought he was down personally, but I understand why they didn't overturn the call on the field. That's really the only moment in this game where you're like, all right, Bobo, you're getting north-south. You're getting north-south. And I love me some Dylan Bell and all the variety of touches that he can get. But to that point, Georgia did not need to do that. And Georgia was getting up and down the field with Bowens and Frazier. And it just looked like they were going to be able to get whatever yardage they wanted. And then they could bring in McCray as the decoy in some of these spots. And then they get a big chunk play in the passing game. Like Georgia was just getting what it wanted. Because after that fumble, it felt like Bobo got down to business. And it was going to be too much for Mississippi State. Dominating the team who was searching for its first home win in conference play in 3 years isn't exactly a sign that you have flipped the switch. Just that context itself, probably not enough to sell you on Georgia as a national championship contender. But it's become a very Kirby Smart-like victory. It has. Frisky underdog, thinks it is hope, has moments of that, only to have it serve as a reminder that there are still, even as the gap seems to narrow, there are still haves and have-nots in this sport. And you saw that play out on Saturday. Georgia now still has SEC title hopes alive after that just beat down of Mississippi State. Now going into this all-important Texas game next week, which will be huge for the playoff or the race to Atlanta, all that stuff. Could in theory split with Texas and Georgia Tech and make the playoff. But with a win against Texas, Dogs would have a chance to make it to Atlanta for the 8th time in 9 years. Pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I will like joke about, hey, I often just root for the funniest thing possible. And I said in this game, it's like It really wouldn't have even been that funny if Mississippi State won, because this isn't like a rivalry. Like, it was really just there would be no affected party. It would be awesome for Mississippi State, but with kind of how Levy's been, it's like they would build off of it. In this case, I would almost prefer a dominant performance by Georgia. This is exactly what I said in the preview. Like, this is the type of game that I hoped for Georgia leading into the playoff, where we keep talking about they're getting behind in these SEC games. They're having to scrap and claw. It's like they're having fun out there. And maybe Kirby Smart wasn't having fun. You know, he was like yelling at the offense, like, hey, take this seriously with the backup in. Like, we want real reps. And again, you talked about like yelling at your guys all the time is pretty effective. And this looked like a Saban win. This looked like an old school Kirby Smart win. And I think Georgia needed to have one of those. Exactly, what I said, to trust their offense, to trust Gunnar Stockton, to have like the deep passing online, to have the running game online, to have the offensive line look well. The Georgia pass rush that we talked about, it was last in the SEC in sacks. They got involved early. I think that they, were able to get a little bit of momentum, even if they didn't create a lot of sacks. It was the fact that they were there in the quarterback's face, creating pressures. So yeah, I think this was just all of the questions I had for Georgia. They didn't answer them against Mississippi State, trust. But what they did do is see the ball go through the hoop. And I think for a team that's this talented, sometimes that's all you need.
Big flex game for those skill players too. Sometimes you just need a game like that where all the skill players are involved. They feel good. It's a long season, and sometimes you look up and you're like, "Man, I'm not producing the way that I thought I would." And fans are saying I'm invisible and I'm making right on that NIL money. And this was not a game for that. This was a good vibes game all around for Georgia. Nate Frazier, man, some of the moments, some of the cuts that he makes, I think it's DeAndre Swift. I just have to remind myself that it's not DeAndre Swift, but man, when he gets in space and that offensive line is paving the way for him, it looks really, really good. And then Noah Thomas getting in on the action, a guy that you've had a lot of invisible games this year, and it's nice when he can actually show up in an SEC road game. But Zachariah Branch turning into a guy, turning into a real dude. Now, he's been a household name in college football for the last 2 years, but I mean, the type of guy that Georgia just did not have last year, can make something out of nothing. I've noticed too, Gunnar Stockton, and this is maybe his biggest area of improvement, is that he's so much more willing to throw into those tighter windows, and especially for Branch. Like, there are a couple times with Branch where you're like, I don't know, that's the guy that you want to necessarily push the envelope with. Like, he's not a big contested catch type of guy, but it just speaks to the confidence. I almost kind of like seeing that out of Gunnar Stockton. He's not afraid. Okay, he's got him 15 yards downfield on an in route. I'm going to let it rip. And I know that he's covered, but I'm just going to go see if my guy can go up there and make a play. And knowing that probably it's going to be incomplete if he can't make a play. But I kind of like seeing that chemistry develop. And Zachariah Branch, I think, has been as advertised. Like, I really do. I think that USC fans watching, if they're turning in and watching this guy, I think they're kind of like, dang, how could we not get some of those talents out of him last year? And he's become like one of the most important players, I think, in the SEC as it relates to the playoff picture, SEC title race, all those different things.
Yeah, I mean, how nice are things for Georgia fans right now where you can look up and go, okay, through all these years, and I'm of course blanking on this guy's name. I've said it a million times. The OC for the back-to-back.
Todd Monken?
Of course,
My
Todd
guy.
Monken. I started
Gotta
calling
love
him
Todd
Hal
Monken.
Mummy. I was like, what? Yes.
Different, little different.
Yeah. So, like, say what you will about, Monken and how awesome the offense was, right? They figured out the quarterback position eventually with a certain Stetson Bennett, right? But under Mike Bobo, you can truly say, for the first time under Kirby Smart, wire to wire, we have figured out the quarterback situation. This is not a Carson Beck. This is not a Stetson Bennett. This is a dude who we picked. We invested in him. He has developed. Okay, on one end, you're developing a quarterback into a guy who I see a lot of NFL stuff from him, man. The zip on the ball, the layering you talked about, him and Bobo are in complete sync. The way that he's able to make the right throw, he takes risks, which is kind of new for a Georgia quarterback in that way. I think is awesome. He takes good risks. In any moment, he's not scared to go deep, but he's also like going to take the check down if it's open. And then, boom, you talked about Branch. Imagine a world in the year of our Lord 2025 where you're with Lincoln Riley and he can't figure you out. And then you go with Mike freaking Bobo and he's the one who unlocks you as a skill position guy. Oh my freaking gosh. I can't be nicer to Georgia and Mike Bobo right now because it's the highest compliment. You're figuring out quarterback and you're figuring out wide receiver better than those guys. Monken and Lincoln Riley.
I'm really impressed with what Bobo is doing this year, and he's making me eat my words in a lot of different ways. I think this offense has really come along well, and I think they're utilizing the tight ends in the way that I hope they would. And I know I've compared it to Monken so much, but that when that dude is your predecessor and he's the best assistant hire of the playoff era of any team, you're going to be held to that standard. And it's funny, I was just you talking about Monken just reminded me. I really only had 2 moments, I think, in this job where I've kind of fangirled when seeing someone in public in the wild. And one is Devin Hester for obvious reasons. Okay, I'm a Bears fan. The return in the Super Bowl is like one of the best moments of my sports fandom, even though the rest of the game sucked. But like like I saw Devin Hester on the sideline of the Peach Bowl, Georgia Ohio State game a few years ago, and I was like, I had to chat him up. Just had to chat him up. That was one where I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. And then last year at the SEC Championship, going into the building at the same time as Monken, and we talked for a couple of minutes, and I was just like, I just love watching your offense, man. I just love watching it. I'm a bear. Like I just love watching the Ravens. I love watching what you've done with Lamar. It's just been an absolute treat. We just kind of exchanged a little bit of pleasantries back and forth. He's probably like, all right, guy, let's take it easy. But Todd Monken is one of the two people that I've fangirled for. Bobo was not reaching that territory. He's not reaching that territory, but this game was really impressive. I love the game plan. I love the response for Georgia.
I'll say really quick too, Oscar Delp is just itching to be a guy that has like a OJ Howard Clemson type game and a big game where it's like you see these glimpses of him, but when they really unlock him and kind of make him the focus of the offense, you saw a couple of those plays in this game where it's like, oh my God, they got Mewtwo out there and they just don't even need him. So I'm fascinated to see how the Titans actually get more involved, which is a funny criticism of Bobo. Anyway.
Elias Williams, I just butchered his name. Elias Williams, the freshman who looks just like a Darnell Washington clone that Georgia can just roll out there. And how is this possible? This isn't fair. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. 6'7", 6'8". I'll sign off on any. You tell me that guy's 6'10", and I'll believe you. Huge. Georgia just rolling out these dudes. The good news, the one thing I'll say for Mississippi State, you saw a lot of Kamario Taylor because obviously Blake Shapen gets demolished, something that felt like it was a long time coming with the hits that he's been taking this year. Not saying it was good that Blake Shapen got smushed in this game, but seeing Kamario Taylor out there, you're getting more reps of this guy, a guy that looks like he's going to be kind of given the keys to the Jeff Levy offense. The other good news for Mississippi State, you didn't have to get your heart ripped out because you came very, very far from leading at the 2-minute timeout like you did against Texas and Tennessee. Still no top 5 victories in the post-Dak Prescott era. So yeah. All right. Let's close with Florida and Kentucky. We have playoff rankings too, so we'll close with that. Will, what do we think had more views? This game, especially given the YouTube TV issues, or the video of Zach Calzada waving $100 bills? What had more views, do you think?
Kentucky is so chaotic, man. It's so underrated, the specific type of chaotic that Kentucky is, because they're like college basketball chaotic. We really don't process that well in the SEC. There's kind of like a new wave of fans with college basketball, but the way that like their kind of memes and culture goes around football, some like the old Trooper Taylor stuff, or not Trooper Taylor, Joker Phillips stuff, it's like I felt like I was right back there leading into this week where it's like, this is a guy who is like, what are you doing, dog? He's flashing $100 bills, calling out some random dude named Garrett. What is this? This is 2008.
First of all, great win for Kentucky. Cutter Boley, happy for those fans. My brother was at this game too, and he's like, yeah, there's some empty stands here, but it's fun. It feels good to win. And those fans got to see their first SEC win at Kroger Field in over 2 years. Great to see this offense look like it's coming together with Cutter Boley. And the fact that he looks so much better than his classmate DJ Lagway in this game was obviously alarming from the Florida side, which we're going to get to in a second here. But the Zach Calzada video, albeit sandwiched between 2 Kentucky wins in SEC play, is still a sign to me that this program needs to start over. Okay? That dude is making a mockery of Kentucky by doing this. And I know he apologized. I know Kentucky came out with a statement. KSR reported that he made a $1.2 million this year. $1.2 million for Zach Calzada. How he got a cent from Kentucky is embarrassing for Mark Stoops. And not just because of his play on the field, but because this is his reaction. That is the guy that you made a 7-figure investment into to be the face of your program in a pivotal year. And meanwhile, the local blue chip recruit, who you in theory should have invested your resources, you should have invested your time into, is showing actual promise, but he's still probably behind schedule in the grand scheme of things to save your season, or at least give you some sort of frisky type territory that you could have had if you had just been willing to invest in him. And instead of just saying, you know what, we'll figure it out. I need a veteran in that room. Give me the 25-year-old, even though he could make it at 2 different SEC programs. The only place he's had any success is at Incarnate Word. All right. Like Calzada, that video is a microcosm of what Kentucky has been doing far too much of the last 4 years. And that is just trying to throw money at the problem and hope it goes away. Like when your dishwasher breaks down in your house, you're a homeowner, you know this, and you're like, man, I just need to get this fixed. I just need to get this fixed. You're like, just give me the most expensive one at the store. And you go in there and you're like, all right, this is fine. And you ignore the fact that the Google reviews for this suck. And it's got like a 2.7. And everybody says this has a huge issue. It's got a manufacturer's malfunction right now. Don't buy this dishwasher. It's terrible. You have all these signs, but instead you just ignore it. And you're like, oh, I hope this money takes care of it. What's the going rate for a dishwasher? I'm just going to throw money at it and it'll be fine. That is Zach Calzada at Kentucky. Okay. That guy played 2 games. And he is mocking you that he made this money, even though you clearly did not do your homework on whatever evaluation you gave of him as a competent SEC quarterback. And it's one of the most embarrassing things that I've seen from a college football team in the 10 years that I've been doing this job. An absolute joke. And if you're associated with that program whatsoever, I think you have every right to just feel every level of cringe that has happened in between 2 SEC wins.
So, okay. Midweek, I felt that. Start of this game, I felt that. But I think if we're going to come in here and tear apart Kentucky and say they're an absolute joke, what about the team they beat 38-7? I think
also a joke. We'll get to them.
Think about it like this. They have their guy. So at the end of the day, that's over. There's no other Zach Calzada coming. I think that I would almost make the opposite point after seeing this video and then seeing Cutter Bully's performance in not just these 2 games, but the Tennessee game. I go, you're done. There's no reason to even miss. Hey, guess what? You can't miss in the portal if you don't have to swing. And I think that's exactly where they're at. So what I would say as a takeaway from this game is, hey, the JJ Hester to like Cutter Bully connection. I know JJ Hester's like likely out of eligibility, but you never know with those things. I don't know if he could like petition the NCAA because playing at Kentucky should count as community service sometimes. I don't know. But that being said, like you could really, for the first time in years, probably, these 3 games, I saw what Mark Stoops has been trying to do for the last like 5 years.
Against a Florida team that's done. That's done.
Sure.
They're done. Stick a fork in Florida. If this is your proof of concept game, I'm not listening to you. I'm just
not. But I'm not saying proof of concept. I'm saying like, hey, we could talk about it's a talent issue with Tennessee. Okay, they're Tennessee. Oh, it's a whatever talent issue or Auburn. I guess Auburn still had their head coach. You could say Hugh Freeze was holding them back. Cool. Hugh Freeze was still there. Everybody was technically locked in. So I don't think we should ever get to a point where Florida, who would beat them like we talked about like 30 times in a row dang near, should be at such a talent disadvantage that we just don't count the stats. So that's all I would have to say for Kentucky after, these years of hardship, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is that it's almost like a dichotomy of, yeah, that's Zach Calzada. That was your plan going into the year. Now not only do you see physically in front of you why that didn't work because he's out there flexing on Garrett, but you also see on the field, like this is what happens when you don't take that chance to your program like Kentucky. That's the only position they have built this way. Everybody else, they've gotten out of the factories of Youngstown, Ohio, like we've talked about, and they've made a living out of developing these guys. And that's what, I think for whoever the next coach is going to be, or maybe if Stoops come back, I don't know. But I don't think I necessarily have seen enough to say, let's run everything back. But I think this is the most hope you probably have felt as a Kentucky fan in a long time because these guys are not dumb. They knew Zach Calzada was Zach Calzada. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't think they had...
They paid him $1.2 million. What do you mean they knew?
No. I'm talking about fans. I'm saying if you're a Kentucky fan, like, I would believe in Vandergrift before I believe in Zach Calzada. He's older than Nussmeier. You know what I'm saying? So I know the program made that mistake. But I think at this point, it's like, hey, that's the past at this point, and what you got to focus on is holding on to this guy so you don't make it again.
If you've made that mistake, to me, that's a sign that you're too far gone. You're too far gone. I don't trust your evaluation. I don't trust your ability to build an offense. I remember when you would meet in a friend of a friend's house in LA to sit down there with Liam Cohen and to discover this up and comer guy that a couple people had recommended to you. And you did your homework and you went through all these different resumes and you said, that's the way I'm going to modernize my offense in the 2020s. That's the guy that I'm going to build everything around. And obviously things have happened with Liam Cohen and the exits from there. Those are what they are. But to sit there and go, that's how we're going to spend 7 figures. You know how much $1.2 million can do for the rest of your roster to be able to plug holes in areas where Kentucky desperately needed to plug holes? And instead, you're out there saying, that's going to be the face of my program. I'm not going to be willing to invest in this because, oh, hey, I'm worried about keeping my job. That just, it sucks on every level. And I just think it was such a bad look. And if it's a win for you, if you consider it a win to judge yourself based on what Florida rolled out there on that field last night, then that's a loss. And if you're Mitch Barnhart sitting up there and going, see, we're turning the corner, I would have real long-term reservations about that, because that was a joke, what Florida did. What Florida did was exactly what you fear. It was not interim coach energy. It was, we are done and we want to be anywhere else but on this football field. The mistakes that were made, DJ Lagway getting benched in this game, Tramel Jones comes in, no choice but to make that decision if you're Billy Gonzalez. And Florida, from a defensive standpoint, was like actually getting healthier, and still the effort was just not there. You had too many guys uncovered. The tackling in space was a train wreck. And Florida's done. Like, it is a reset right now. This game was two programs that look like they're going in opposite directions, but in reality, I don't think they're that far apart. And maybe that's a hater thing to say about a Kentucky program that I think I've given the benefit of the doubt to over the course of the time that I've been doing this job. But I still come back to the belief that Zach Calzada video just said a ton to me. And you should feel good to win. You should feel good to win. So I'm not saying you shouldn't feel good to win, but if you think all of a sudden, oh, Mark Stoops has figured out offensive evaluation now, no, no way.
Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, I'm not saying that exactly. And I would agree with you in that, yeah, they're not that far apart, but I think it's more of a slanderous point to Florida than Kentucky. I think that at the end of the day, you at least have some, like, you don't really know what you have in DJ Lagway with Florida, and I don't think you even really know with Cutter Boley. But all I'm saying is that those days, whatever, regardless, the days of Zach Calzada are gone. Like I said, your number one priority, I think, has been at Kentucky. You got to find a way to tamper with John Summerall for the last month and a half. You got to be ringing him off. I'm not saying keep Mark Stoops. What I am saying is that you have seen the blueprint of how to be successful at Kentucky, and is the absolute opposite of Zach Calzada, right? Just because you got kind of lucky in the transfer portal once with a quarterback, and that wasn't even sustainable in that way, doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to be the next Ohio State or Oregon, where you're just going to have a revolving door. So I think there's a lesson in all of this, which is that you need to just stick with what got you here, which is developing your guys. And I hope that they learn that lesson and they don't try to go be Ohio State, because it's not going to work for them. I think that being a gritty, tough team is how you can win at Kentucky, and it was never going to be, through all this stuff they tried to do. I think we're just seeing that so clearly now.
I think that's enough on Kentucky. Any other thoughts on DJ Lagway? Watching this come to an end, what a depressing season. Wish we could just hit reset for Lagway and Nussmeier. Just a bummer, just an absolute bummer to watch the mistakes that he's making. I mean, he's not seeing guys over the middle of the field. He's been underdeveloped. I almost wish he could do the Dante Moore thing. I almost wish he could truly just treat next year. And this won't be the case because there's too much money at stake. He's going to be in his pre-draft year, and there's a lot of incentive for him to be able to get to the NFL. Like, I understand all that. But I almost wish he could just hit the Dante Moore reset year. If I were DJ Lagway, I would go try and just join whatever offense Will Stein is in. Now, would Will Stein want DJ Lagway to build around? Could he actually see that as a path? Well, I did for one former 5-star guy who needed to hit reset. That would be the guy that I would look at and go, wherever you go, like, sign me up, man. Let's link up. Let's make this happen. Let's work out together in the offseason. He needs a reset. He needs a reset physically. He needs a reset mentally. All of it. It's just not there. I think we've seen the last of him at Florida, if I'm guessing. But this ending, it was a long time coming, and it's just such a bummer. It's just such a bummer to see it play out the way that it has, because I don't even think there's been a lot of, oh my God, unbelievable moments that we got from Lagway this year. Only a handful, like the Texas game. But outside of that, man, just not enough moments to make you think this guy is worth building your offense around, and he's worth, forking over big time NIL money to be able to get.
Yeah, I think that there is a lesson in here too, which is that this is what could potentially happen if you don't fire your guy at the bottom. Like Billy Napier, they fired him after a win, right? And so what that means is, okay, you go into the Georgia game, you put out your heart and soul, but you don't then have that extra lever that you can pull, like Auburn did, like LSU did, where you go, hey, like Arkansas did for a minute, where you go, we got a new guy in here. It's a whole new thing. We're going to blame everything on that guy. This loss squarely sits on the people in this building, because Billy Napier's been out of here for almost a month at this point, right? And so that's what makes it so much harder, is you can't just be like, okay, guys, well, that loser put us here. Now it's our team. We can make something of it. And that's the point that I make about guys being checked out versus guys not. Oh my goodness. He's 11 touchdowns and 12 picks on this year. So yeah, if you're DJ Lagway, I mean, I don't know why you'd come back. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a player that's been super. The thing is, at some point, you have to say, You took the money. You had their success. All this was put in you. Even the fact that the guy was recruited over you or transferred in over you initially, and you were seen as the future of the franchise, and everybody was like crediting Graham Mertz's leadership for holding the team together. You had all these buffer years already in my mind where you were, what's up?
He wasn't recruited over though, because Mertz was there before he was. So Mertz just stayed that extra year.
That's a good. Yeah, you're right. He was already there. You're so right. But in terms of like, it wasn't promised to him to start. He was promised that kind of buffer year, just exactly what you were talking about. Circumstances took him out of that, but he already had the opportunity to learn behind the veteran, is what I'm saying. So it's not like, yeah, he was quote unquote thrown into the fire, but all the fans wanted it. It was an advantageous situation, I think, at the end of last year. And so he wasn't able to build on that. So I think it's just done. I mean, I don't really see why, if you're Florida, it's the point I made about Harold Perkins LSU. It's like, why would you come back if you're playing football here next year, playing football in college next year? Try something else. Go to one of these programs that are known for saving quarterbacks, exactly like what you said, because you can't have just this be your film. It's not an NFL, it's not a football player at this point,
There's going to be some notable SEC quarterbacks in the portal. Very, very notable. It'd be very interesting to see how that plays out. Remember, a portal window now is different. It's January 2nd through January 15th, the way that this plays out. So just something to keep in mind. Different for the fired coaches. I think now that they're past a certain deadline, they're not subject to the same early window that the other coaches who were fired in September got. So that's, I don't know, just Google it. I'm sure Pete Nakos has written about it, or Ross Dellinger a million times. All right, let's close with predicting the playoff top 12. We're going to get this 100% accuracy. We had all 12 of the teams that were in. Oh, all right, I did 10 last week, but in my Saturday Down South column that comes out on Tuesday morning, we had the 12 teams that were in there right, just with a few different out of order. So I'm going to say that it'll look like this. BYU will be at 12, Oklahoma at 11, Texas at 10, Notre Dame at 9, Oregon at 8, Texas Tech at 7, Ole Miss at 6, Georgia at 5, Alabama at 4, Texas A&M at 3, Indiana at 2, Ohio State at 1. A&M's probably not jumping Indiana, but I get why A&M fans would start to feel this way. That comeback, man. I texted you during the middle of that. That catch, the Omar Cooper catch of the year. I'm not saying it should win an ESPY this year, but given the context of that moment for Indiana to get that foot in bounds, I still cannot believe that play was made. He broke Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson is no longer with us because of a catch that a player made in a tackle football game.
Gus Johnson, I know people have like varying opinions of him, but I think in the big moments, Gus Johnson does bring something because he's so almost random. Like, it's just so hard to know what he's ever going to do. And like, I love him. I've never seen him like that. Like, you're so right. It's like, that's the only Gus Johnson call that sounds anything like that. And just to kind of like come back around on this, what's so funny to me? Again, I always joke about SEC bias. I'm not even going to get into the Ohio State, Indiana quality wins conversation. What I'm going to say is, if you think that Notre Dame is so awesome that you're going to put them at 9, what does beating that team at home mean? Like, how is that not the most impressive thing that any college football team has done this year outside of Alabama? But again, Alabama has the FSU loss. A&M doesn't. A&M doesn't have a bad loss. They haven't lost at all. So I don't understand how we can, on one hand, punish Miami, benefit Notre Dame for an early season game, but then at the same time look at A&M and go, oh, they've just gotten better since then. It's not like A&M is worse than they were in the Notre Dame game. In fact, if anything, they are significantly better. I don't think they allow that many points against Notre Dame right now. So it's just very funny to think like, wow, they're kind of getting cooked on both ends of this. And I actually feel if you're an A&M fan, you should feel disrespected. And like I said, Alabama has a loss. So there's only so much that you could, even the 4 ranked teams, even all this different stuff, the top 3 teams ahead of you haven't lost. And thank goodness that we're here, because I hate it when like undefeated teams get hopped. So that's the conversation.
People won't want to hear this from me, but Indiana beating Oregon by double digits in Eugene still matters. Definitely still matters. I mean, it's not all of a sudden a bad loss. The fact that the selection committee put Oregon still ahead of Notre Dame probably reflects that. And you could say like, oh, Indiana's win at Iowa felt similar to at least, like Mizzo, or similar to the second best A&M win on that resume. People don't want to hear it from me. I'd actually be okay with A&M at 2. I don't think it's that crazy. This will get sorted out in the Big Ten championship anyways. So I'm not necessarily sitting here on pins and needles, but I do think that's probably how it's going to play out. I don't think the selection committee will look at those programs getting wins and all of a sudden elevate A&M that much more. But we'll see. Crazier things have happened. All right. That's a pod. That'll do it. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ Garrett, at Nussmeier. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.